Fab. So I'm Gemma. I'm the Global Customer Experience Team Lead for Canyon Bikes, and we're actually the biggest direct-to-consumer bike brand in the world. I've been at Canyon just under 2 years now. That means that the CX team is actually just under 2 years as well, and we're growing exponentially. You know, I actually did my sums for this talk, and, you know, I've been working in design now for 20 years. You know, in that time I've been a producer, an information architect, I've been a UX writer, UX researcher, you know, I've even been a design studio founder, but, you know, in all of that time, I've never actually been called a designer. I didn't go to art school. You know, my understanding of type is basic. Like, honestly, you know, color theory sort of baffles the hell out of me. I'm not a very good designer, but that doesn't mean that I can't design brilliant products. Before we go any further, let me teach you about aesthetic usability effect. So aesthetic usability effect is a phenomenon wherein poorly designed, poorly performing, you know, unusable products are rated as, you know, better than they actually are because they look nice. And if you flip that on this head, it's, you know, it's this idea that good design hides a multitude of sins. Good looking design hides a multitude of sins, you know, whereas bad design, it bathes them in disinfecting sunlight. Because, you know, I believe when you can see a product, when you can see a problem with your product, you can fix it. You know, as a bad designer, I can't use motion to guide my users through a complex onboarding flow. I have to simplify the flow. And I can't use a specific UI trend to align my product with its peers, you know, and I'm looking, you know, quite firmly at glassmorphism and fintech at the moment. You know, I need clear, consistent messaging. I can't use 3D to help illustrate and explain a tricky concept. You know, I need plain language and I need a clear hierarchy of information. And once you strip away all of those signifiers of great design, actually what you're left with on one hand is just boxes, words and pictures and some connectors. But on the other, actually it's your purpose and your content, and it's a strong architecture. I'm not here to dunk on cool design. You know, clever design, you know, it has the power to elevate, you know, a good idea into something that's iconic. But cool design on its own has an awful lot to answer for. You know, cool design can get a crappy idea signed off just because of aesthetic usability effect. And when that cool design becomes a trend, we end up with loads more crappy design, and that does more harm than it does good. You know, think about it. How many times have you heard someone pitch Uber for X or Tinder for Y, you know, which is essentially a cool design masking a bad purpose? I think we all know enough about Uber now to understand that the gig economy creates economic distress, and basically, you know, Tinder is just dick pics. But as a design, Uber looks cool. You know, you get to watch your little car creeping closer to you. You make payments without ever holding cash in your hands, and you learn to expect immediacy. You learn to expect a completely frictionless experience, even if that means you spend 80 euros bar hopping when we were all allowed out, you know, during an evening when actually a €7 bus ticket would have done the same job with, you know, a small amount of additional friction. I've actually been pitched Tinder for bikes twice in the past 2 years since I've been at Canyon. And I even considered it myself as an idea at one point. You know, I taught myself to build a basic card swipe prototype, and at least to test out the idea as a concept. You know, it took all night to program 3 screens. I got bored and the idea got ditched. You know, but buying a €7,000 bike, and some of our bikes are €7,000, some of our bikes are €10,000. You know, a customer can visit the site 24 times during a 6-month period before they decide to buy that bike. The Tinder swipe, left or right, as a behavior, it's quick. It takes less than a second. You know, it's based solely on first impressions. I can almost imagine Tinder for bikes working, say, between a road bike and a mountain bike. But what about 2 bikes within the same product category? You know, for some of our bikes, there can be a €5,000 difference between those bikes with very little visually to differentiate them. You know, on first impression, it's impossible to tell the difference. But, you know, give me 30 seconds and I'll explain the differences. Give me 180 seconds and I'll give you everything you need to choose between those 2 bikes. I don't want my customers to dismiss a bike that took millions of euros to develop in less than a second. That's not how people should buy bikes. Honestly, it's not how they should choose a partner either, but look, this is where we're at now. So when I talk about designing purposeful products, I'm saying a product needs to exist to serve a purpose. And I know that seems glib, but it can't just be a container for a cool interaction. The design might not even be terribly clever, and we're not in this to win awards, but I need to give my customers everything that they need to choose between two seemingly similar but different bikes. Throughout my career, I've been heavily influenced by Sarah Richards. She was the inventor of content design and runs an organisation now called Content Design London. She was actually part of the team Government Digital Services, GDS, who transformed the UK government. I think one of the most startling facts of their work was that they saved the UK government £5 billion in the first 12 months by using human-centered design. And I sat in many of her talks, just wide eyes and in praise of her. And one of the things that she said in one of her talks once was that content is your product. And she asked us to imagine a website and then to strip away the content, to take out the photos and the illustrations and the call to action copy and the headlines and the body copy and the graphs and the tables and the price lists and the instructional text. And then all you're left with are some colours and some boxes. And that's not a product. We could sell bikes, continue to sell bikes without visual design, but we would grind to halt in a second without content. So one of my absolute favourite quotes comes from this book, and it's from Joe Gebbia, who is Airbnb founder. So I'm actually going to read it to you now. He talks about a time when Airbnb were just on the brink of collapse. And he said hosts were putting up pictures at their apartments that were blurry or were taken at night and were not really desirable places to stay. We said, let's go solve that problem. Let's fly to New York, where we had 30 listings, and take really nice pictures for the hosts for free, not charge them. So we went to New York, met some hosts, took some pictures of their apartments, and within a week, revenue had doubled. Now, I love that quote, not because it's mind-blowing or insightful, actually because the exact opposite. A content strategist would have spotted that problem on the first day. How many thousands of dollars did Airbnb whip through because they didn't speak to a content strategist? How many fantastic ideas have died because nobody listened to a person who understood how content works? I'm a T-shaped generalist. If I did one of those weird skills presentation CVs, I'd probably be about 20% visual design, 50% research, and 100% content. And because of that, Canyon's customer experience team is content first. We prototype and test with live content because there is no point prototyping and testing otherwise. Now, I'm lucky that the majority of the people on my team are great writers and we can work in that way. However, as the team grows, and it is growing quickly, future versions of my team will include almost equal numbers of content specialists and visual design specialists. But if I'm being 100% honest, we're not actually content first, we're architecture first. Because before the product can exist in any tangible shape, it needs an architecture. I've got my boss, John Keeler, to thank for this. When we talk about product architecture, it's essentially a roundhouse kick in the face for every cool but, unrealizable idea. Because even if your idea is great, even if there's an audience for it, even if the content tests well, if the architecture is janky, your great product will fail. And when we talk about architecture, we're looking way beyond user archetypes and UI usability. We need to understand so many different factors. Who's going to build the product and how? And who's responsible for maintaining the product? And what type of skills do they need? And how can we design something that can accommodate a new product line? And how much of this is hard-coded and how much of it is manually maintained? And what about translations? Will finish fit into the character limits? Because when we're talking about architecture, actually we're talking about design constraints and creating boundaries for ourselves. Creativity is great, but unbridled creativity is expensive. It creates unfamiliar patterns and confusions for our customer, and worse than anything, it doubles the workload of our teams internally. As a bad designer, I lack the skills to present something polished and pretty. And if you can't design something pretty, you have to design something that works. You know, the beauty of product architecture is that there's no one simple solution. It isn't a screen and it isn't a button. It's pretty much everything we know about our team and the product and the customer distilled into one singular vision. You know, the most important feature of product architecture is that no one person owns it. No single individual is responsible for producing it. It's a team sport. As designers, we have to listen and absorb, not just to the customers and not just to the stakeholders, but also to the people who are building the product and the people who will look after it in years to come. Too many products are designed by and for excellent designers. They fail to capture the needs of every user, not just the ones we hope will buy it or actually in this day and age just give us their data for free. The best products are the ones that make sense to everyone, not just the designers. And that's why sometimes it really helps to not think like a designer. And that's it, really. That's me. Thank you so much for listening to me. If you are interested, here's the book. It's well designed. It's written by John Colco. It's my Bible. I absolutely adore it. And, you know, it gives you a vision for designing products in there as well. If you ever want to get in touch with me, I'm on Twitter at Gemma Germains. I'm sure my Twitter handle has been shared via this talk series, and I'm always happy to talk to anyone who who's interested in getting into product design. And yeah, that's me. Thank you.